Hello and welcome to Energy Transition Talk, the podcast that explores the challenges and opportunities of transitioning to a low-carbon future. I'm Paulina.
I'm Justine.
And I'm Jim.
And we are your hosts for Energy Transition Talk.
In this podcast, we seek to break down some of the most complex and important issues regarding the energy transition and how it impacts us. In each episode, we tell a story by bringing you various perspectives about the energy transition so that you can make the best and most informed decisions for you and your communities.
The International Energy Agency, or IEA, anticipates that adopting clean energy technologies will create 14 million jobs by 2030 and an additional 16 million to retrofit and construct energy-efficient buildings and electric vehicles. However, many students concerned about fossil fuel industry's role in climate change and job security risks are turning away from careers traditionally associated with fossil fuel industry, like petroleum engineering. This can create a shortage of positions needed for the energy transition. At the same time, about 5 million fossil fuel sector jobs are expected to be lost.
So with this in mind, how can we manage this critical transition in the workforce, especially between opportunities that might be different both in locations and geographically, and that require different skill sets? In this episode, we will dive into the future of our energy workforce.
First, I chat with Dr. Barbara Ransom, an internationally known geoscientist at the National Science Foundation, about current trends in the energy workforce, the broad range of skills that we'll need for the energy transition, the implications of artificial intelligence or AI, and potential solutions to increase interest in STEM and in green jobs.
I then speak with Abhinav Vishal, a petroleum engineering student at the Rajiv Gandhi Institute of Petroleum Technology in India, about the role that petroleum engineering can play in the energy transition in his country.
Here's my conversation with Dr. Ransom. Dr. Barbara Ransom is an internationally known geoscientist at the Geo Innovation Hub at the National Science Foundation. She has previously worked at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography and the California Space Institute at the University of California, San Diego. In addition to her scientific pursuits, Dr. Ransom is an author of books for the general public on earth science and a science consultant on books about the earth and its oceans. She holds a PhD in theoretical geochemistry from UC Berkeley and a master's in geology from Louisiana State University. Welcome to Energy Transition Talk, Dr. Ransom. We're excited to have you here.
Oh, thanks, Justin. I'm so happy to be here.
So to start off, would you just like to introduce yourself to the audience and maybe tell us a little bit about what drew you to the geosciences?
Sure. Yeah. Right now, I work at the National Science Foundation down in Washington, D.C., or in the D.C. area. And I'm in the Directorate for Geosciences, so I know a lot about what's going on in the Earth, atmosphere, ocean, and polar sciences. I do a lot of funding of university faculty and students and research projects that they want to carry out. And the Geo Innovation Hub is actually relatively new. It's something that we started in about 2019. And what it is it's to help academics translate their research results to society and to the economy. And part of that has to do with the energy transition and also with climate change.
And today we're talking about training, the next generation energy workforce for the energy transition. And I want to start with a Wall Street Journal article that was published earlier this year, which reported that the number of undergraduates studying petroleum engineering has decreased by 75% since 2014, even though the average petroleum graduate earns about 40% more than the computer science graduate. So can you explain this trend? Are we seeing a cultural pushback against careers that are traditionally associated with the fossil fuel industry?
Yeah, and it's not only petroleum engineering where there's a problem, in mining also. And in some ways, it's not something that's new to this field, because both mining and the energy extraction industries, they're very cyclical, so they kind of boom and bust. So when the price of petroleum is high, they're doing a lot of hiring. And then when the price goes down, they're doing a lot of firing. And in fact, maybe 2 years ago, the major oil companies were just letting everybody go. And that was in the geosciences, geological engineers, geologists, all kinds of people. But now there's kind of a hiring boom going on because of Critical minerals are now coming on board. Everybody wants to move to the new green economy and to, just more renewables. And everything requires resources that come from the earth, from basically mining or come from the energy sector. And so somebody's got to find that stuff, and somebody's got to help get it out of the ground. And that's really what the geological engineers, petroleum engineers, mining engineers, that's what those people actually specialize in. And the people in the geosciences actually find where all of it is. And then that's how that all sort of happens.
So is the problem? So this seems like the problem is upcoming students, Gen Zers. They're concerned about the fossil fuel industry's role in climate change, but also job security. It's a very cyclical career. So maybe right now it's doing really well, but in 10, 20 years maybe it'll go bust. And
yeah, I mean, nobody wants to lose their job. If you spend 20 years in a field and you rise up to sort of senior levels, I mean, in some ways you're kind of like the people that they let go first, because you're more expensive than somebody who's new that they might hire at the bottom. And actually, when I got my master's degree, it was at Louisiana State University. And a lot of my colleagues that graduated at that time with master's degrees got jobs in the oil industry, and they basically had jobs for 2 or 3 years, and then the price of petroleum went way down and they all got fired. And so they're all looking for jobs. Some of them became lawyers, actually.
Yeah, so is the issue within like just petroleum or mining engineering, or is it kind of a more broader all engineering in general? Because if that were the case, then shouldn't we be seeing more growth in areas like electrical or civil engineering that are more, catered towards the energy transition and have a better future?
You'd think you'd see that, but really what's happened, at least in the US, is I think the number of engineering degrees is about 600 in a given year. That's how many engineering graduates we have. In China, it's, like 60,000. Okay, so there's just not that much interest in the US, and actually this is true about most of the Western world. There's not that much interest in going into engineering like there is in China or there is in India. Both China and India are total powerhouses for engineering degrees. And why that is, could be any number of reasons. In some ways, people in sort of the Western Hemisphere, they have pretty high standards of living, and they see a lot of things on media, on television, movies. You see doctors, you see lawyers, you see, security individuals. You don't really see people working in engineering or, shows about those kinds of jobs. And so people aren't really exposed to that. And I think their parents actually have a lot of say about what kids eventually decide they're going to major in, or even when they're younger, the kinds of careers that they might have. And so engineering is not something that comes to people's mind, even though it's a fantastic career and it has relatively high salaries, regardless of what engineering you're in. So, there's a number of different reasons for why we have this shortage of engineers. And, I think even people in my agency are worried about that, and, people certainly in the corporate sector are worried about it because they can't hire people. They've got, 20 or 30% more engineers that they'd like to hire, but they don't have any that are graduating that they can actually, a workforce that they can access.
Yeah. So do you think the issues about climate change, the energy transition, job security, these are kind of exacerbating this broader issue that you're...
Definitely. Any of the jobs that have to do with, let's say, extraction of natural, raw materials from the earth, young people, they don't want to be associated with those kind of careers because they see that that's actually exacerbating the problems that we're seeing with climate, as opposed to seeing it as a way you might be able to have a solution to those problems. Mm-hmm. And really, I think in some ways, the conversation just has to change. And that has to do with really how those who are in the engineering fields, those that are companies that hire engineers and use engineers in their processes, need to have a different way of talking about what value they provide to society and the kinds of opportunities that they have that's available, where they're actually helping solve the problems that we have now, as opposed to kind of exacerbating those problems.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of paradoxical where these concerns may be well-founded, but maybe this talent shortage is now actually a problem for the skills that we're going to need for the energy transition.
Totally. Yes, totally. And it's not just, right now I'm sort of talking about the professional careers, people that get, bachelor's degrees or graduate degrees. But, it extends even down to, the blue-collar workforce. I was just talking to the people at the CDC, and this is their division called NIOSH, which is basically mine safety, and they work a lot with the mining industry to make sure that, open pit mines or underground mines, that there's a lot of safety precautions that go on there. And they say that the mining companies can't find people, even truck drivers or anybody even working, kind of like an open pit mine. Okay, let's face it, the environment there is not the greatest in terms of a working environment, but you still have to extract those natural materials from the earth. And they're having hard times finding even relatively low-level jobs and being able to hire people that will stay there. One was told a story that, they're pretty desperate. They can't hire mining engineers, so they go to electrical engineers and say, hey, why don't you come work at our mine? And they pay them a good salary, and they come and they work for one day, and then they go like, I'm leaving. They go, oh, this is not for me.
Yeah.
But what they do find out, and this might be a kind of solution for the problem, is that if a student comes and during their college years and they do an internship at the mining institute, at the mining organization, or let's say at the oil company, and they get to know the people there, and they get to know what goes on, because really, when you're at an internship, you're there for a certain period of time, 3 months or 6 months or something. And so you actually get to know the people, and you get to see the actual problems that they're trying to solve and the kinds of things that they're doing. And you start to understand more about what that profession's like and the people that work there. Because I tell you, and that doesn't matter if you're in engineering or any kind of a job, a lot of times it's the people that keep you working there, And so when you get to see them and you get to actually interact with them and work with them on mutual problems, like in a team, you get really excited about it. And when they have students that have done internships, let's say at the mines or in the oil fields, those people tend to stick once they graduate and they're given a job offer, then they tend to stick there. So I think part of the solution could be to have more of those experiences that students would have during their, college years, where they actually go out and they do some, work there with these people on problems that they can see the value of what they've learned in their education, and also get a chance to really see more what it's like to work in that environment and the kinds of people that they'll be working with. Because, hey, the engineers are actually, believe it or not, pretty cool people, when you get to know them.
Yeah, that just speaks to the importance of having students kind of in that college.
Yeah.
Those college years are really important for seeing what our future workforce is going to look like.
Yeah.
Can we go back to what are the fields that are necessary for the energy transition? You mentioned it includes both blue and white collar, but maybe just elaborate more on.
Oh yeah, well,
the range of fields that are needed.
Just, everything, because you've got wind energy, and so there's all kinds of things all kinds of people that you have to work in that industry, not just people that do the engineering of the wind generators, but then you've got to have, where are you going to site them? Are they going to be offshore? Are they going to be onshore? You've got to have people that actually work with insurance, that, in the business sector. There's the whole energy transition is more than just saying, okay, we're going to build a bunch of electric cars. Okay, where is that energy that's going to create that electricity going to come from? Really, with regard to, let's say, water energy. Okay, so you got dams, so you got electrical stations. The turbines are, turned by water falling down into the lower parts of the river from some lake up on the top. We've pretty much dammed up all the rivers. There is really no more capacity in the Western world for hydro power. Okay, that's kind of maxed out for the most part now. So then you got to say, okay, what else is there? Well, you got solar and you've got wind, but those are kind of intermittent. So you don't always have energy being generated by those, and so you've got a whole battery industry that has to come up. Some way you can store that energy. There's new things like hydrogen energy, which you can actually hydrogen is generated in the geologic system, but it doesn't get trapped very often because it's so light. And other ways that you generate hydrogen is by breaking water bonds. So there's all kinds of different, I mean, it's science, it's engineering, it's like basically a whole economy around the energy transition. So when people say like, oh, we don't want to totally make that transition because then anybody who's working in the oil and gas industry will like lose their jobs. That's actually not true, because a lot of what they do has transferable skills that can be used in, let's say, geothermal or any of these other kinds of industries that they have. You know, you have to have people installing charging stations or solar panels. It's a whole new kind of sector of the economy that's going to form that will actually probably be more robust than the present industry is now. So lots of different aspects can be had.
And that was kind of my next question. Like, what are the skills that are going to be needed for the next generation energy workforce?
Well, okay, you know, you're going to have the people who can think about stuff and create new stuff, and then you're going to have people that can make new stuff. And the making of the new stuff does not necessarily mean it's somebody who's inventing something actually totally brand new. It has to be, you know, manufacturing of all of these things. So you've got to have people that can do manufacturing, but manufacturing is undergoing a big change now too. It's not like the days when everybody was standing on an assembly line and, you know, putting this piece in this motor or this these sets of screws in this circuit board or whatever it is they might be doing. A lot of that's being done with robotics. And so the skill level, even for manufacturing jobs, which used to be, okay, if you had a high school degree or maybe you didn't even have one, you could still work there. Or you could work as a roughneck on an oil rig. You wouldn't even need to have an education pretty much to work in those sectors. Now, it's much more sophisticated. A lot of things have gone to, you know, if you can't do computer work or you can't, you know, use a lot of digital technology, that makes it pretty hard for you to even get a job in what used to be a lot of unskilled labor in manufacturing. So I would say that increasing the digital literacy of the new workforce is really, that's pretty much the underpinning of what the energy transition is going to be like. So
yeah, but we're also going to need more manual labor type careers, right? Because I mean, the energy transition is not going to happen with everyone sitting at their desk. So
right.
You also think there'll also be a demand in like an increase in demand for like maintenance operations or people who come to fix those solar panels or heat pumps.
Yeah, and actually I have a friend, he's a chemical engineer, and he's worked at big corporations, and he's a PhD level person, but he says that for every PhD that's hired by a company, there are 7 lab tech people that really have to be hired for each PhD level person, because they don't want the PhD people running the instrumentation or the equipment, because they don't do a good job of it. Yeah. So, you know, they want to have people who are experts in running a mass spectrometer or making certain kinds of measurements or doing certain kinds of jobs that the PhDs may be looking at designing some new assemblage of technology that could be put together, but they're not the ones that are going to actually build it. So there's actually, for everyone that you have that's in sort of a professional degree, you've got a host of other people out there who are actually skilled workers, but they don't have PhDs, you know? And so they're the ones that are actually making everything work. And so you have to have a whole spectrum of types of employees. And something I think that is missing, at least in the US, is that we used to have a lot of trade schools. There's still some trade schools around, but not as many as there used to be. And these are where, you know, they train people to be an electrician or a plumber or, you know, an auto mechanic or whatever it might be. And those really have kind of disappeared to a great extent. And I think there needs to be a renaissance in starting up some of those educational institutions again and making that, I mean, those are actually high paying, good careers to have. You know, it's not that that if you're a plumber, I mean, my plumber is getting $250 an hour. That's more than I make. Okay, you know, what can I say?
Yeah.
But you know, but he's a very skilled guy. He knows all of these incredible new ways of doing things that I would not know, even if I watched YouTube and like tried to learn from YouTube how to fix things. And so we're losing, I think, that part of the employment spectrum, which is actually essential for us to do any kind of energy transition. And or even deal with climate change. I mean, you know, you want to take a look. I mean, because those are both really tied together.
Yeah.
I mean, because the reason you want to do the energy transition is because of climate change, and the rapidly changing weather patterns that are occurring, where disasters are happening that we need to find a way either to mitigate those or repair the damage that they cause. And that requires a lot of people who really have hands-on skills and can make things, build things at all different kinds of levels. So
Right.
it's a very complicated, you know, it's not how things used to be, even 10 or 15 years ago.
On my last apartment, I just remember every time something broke down, our plumber would be in such high demand.
I know.
He was just so busy.
Yeah.
So definitely, even now, it's already something that we need more of in our workforce. How do you think AI is changing the
Oh my
future of
gosh.
jobs in the energy space?
It's hard to know, but even okay, I actually have a LinkedIn group called the Geoscience Innovation Network, and so I'm always looking on LinkedIn for what's going on. And actually, I highly recommend everybody should get on LinkedIn and see what's going on, because you find out really what's going on now and who's doing what, and really what the new things are. And I have to say, AI is changing so much so fast that it's even hard to wrap your mind around what it can do and what its potential is. And I would say that anybody who's coming into the workforce has to at least understand what it is and how it works and able to use it. You don't have to create it, but you have to be able to use it or understand how you could use it and explore around with it. I mean, it's such a new, powerful, transformative technology, and we are just at the very groundswell of what AI can do. And I don't know, I can't even envision how it might radically change things, because it's such a new development with so much potential, and it's changing so rapidly. I mean, it's probably the fastest changing technology that we have, more so than anything in, let's say, even the energy transition or whatever we might be doing with climate change. And actually that could be a tool that we can use to actually accelerate our ability to deal with both of these issues, which are actually pretty critical to human life on the planet.
Yeah. I mean, it may not replace it won't replace electricians probably, or a lot of blue collar and white collar jobs, but hopefully it'll help accelerate our response to the energy transition.
Yeah. And anything that you have to do with your hands, it's not going to, outside of a manufacturing environment, it can't replace that, okay? Mm-hmm. But anything that's in sort of like a mass production kind of an environment, I think that is really going to change a lot of kind of those routine jobs and make it so that people actually have more time to be more creative. And actually, what would be really great is if it would create more time for people to be creative, as opposed to doing routine operations. So that might actually be one of the biggest benefits of AI. Now, how people make a living, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to find out.
Yeah, right.
So going back to the transferability of skills in the oil and gas industry, so a key theme of our podcast is how can we meet climate goals in a way that doesn't leave workers or communities behind, and I'm wondering how transferable are these skills that workers have developed over time in the oil and gas sector? Like, is it plausible for workers who are currently doing oil drilling to transition to, say, geothermal, or workers doing offshore oil to transition to offshore wind or carbon capture and storage?
Yeah, you're totally right on there. Yes. In fact, a lot of those skills, and it across both the science and the technology and sort of the more manual labor kinds of activities, totally transferable. It just takes, I mean, let's say you're a geologist in an oil company, okay, and you do a lot of seismic work. You're looking at a lot of what's going on in the subsurface by looking at seismic waves and, maps of what's, below the ground that you can't actually see, like visually, but you use through remote sensing kinds of technologies. You do the same thing for geothermal, because geothermal has the same kinds of problems, and so does, carbon sequestration. You have to look for, well, what are the reservoir rocks? Where can you put all this, this fluid, this CO2, liquid CO2? Or where can you store hydrogen subsurface? Or oil, or gas even, oil and gas. How can you transport it from place to place? All of those skills are completely transferable to these other alternative energies. And what's cool about these alternative energies is it also opens up new areas. For example, there's marine energy, which works with waves. So you have like power in waves, and they're always coming in. You've got tides. You have actually temperature differences in the ocean that can drive energy. And so the whole energy transition, there's a whole panoply of different kinds of technologies that could be used, that when we were really a coal and petroleum sort of energy mix, that was like the vast majority of how we got all of our energy. And it was cheap. So that's what we would use. So none of these other alternative types of energy were really explored very much until the climate crisis. And then you say, like, well, okay, we've got to decarbonize.
So how can we address this cultural pushback or increase interest in STEM and also those fields that are less glamorous, maybe, but more hands-on and essential jobs that we're going to need?
Yeah.
Is it on companies to change this conversation? Is it on governments, parents, schools?
Yeah. You know what? People are influenced from the very first time they're exposed to the world outside of, let's say, their family unit. Okay? They see what's on TV. They see what's on YouTube. They see what's on social media. All right? And I would have to say that there's not, and they see what's in movies, and they don't really see anything about engineering there, or anything about any really science and technology fields. Or I wouldn't say anything, but they don't see much. Okay, I mean, there's Oppenheimer. Okay, you can see that movie, but that is not necessarily the best movie to watch if you want to go into, let's say, nuclear physics. But their social media. Actually, I was just at a conference the other day, and the CEO of the professional society, which is the Geological Society of America, she invited the 6 biggest geo-influencers to the meeting. One of these people has 2 million followers on TikTok.
Wow.
And these people, if any of them were over 25, I would be shocked. They were all, compared to me, they were young. They were super energetic. They were really fun. Their posts were completely scientifically correct, but they made it fun. They made it really interesting. They have hundreds of thousands of followers on social media that are seeing that, hey, geosciences it's cool. It's like really interesting. There's a lot of really cool places you can go, and look at who these influencers are. These influencers are really fun people. So if I wanted to go into the geosciences, I would get to work with people like that. That's actually that's a very powerful message to send to people, like young people, who haven't decided what they want to do with their lives, And they start thinking like, wow, this is like actually this could be a really fun kind of a career to have. And I think we need to have more things like that. I mean, hey, okay, I can't even think of what I would have, but, maybe there's somebody in the entertainment field who would like to say, well, okay, look what happened with the Big Bang Theory. Okay, they're a bunch of nerdy physicists, but now somebody would have to write some scripts and have some kind of, interesting storylines that would be science and engineering related, or just even about the lives of people that work in those fields. I mean, there's all kinds of drama, and there's also all kinds of like really amazingly fun stuff that happens there. But it's never sort of showcased in, let's say, the entertainment field. Now, what could industry do? Industry could actually pay for more internships. They could pay for, actually my grandfathers, they all got their graduate degrees by going to, they called them co-ops back in the day. Okay, this is back in like the 30s or something, the 40s. But it's where you were at university for 6 weeks to 2 months, and then you spent a month at a company, working in the company. Okay, so you brought whatever you learned in the classroom to the company, you worked there, and you got paid. So you got paid. So it was a way that you could actually afford to go to college, and you still picked up real skills in the real world kind of an environment. And so that, as we saw from the mining industry people, that is how you get people who want to work with you because they have been in that environment. They see the problems that are involved there that are really interesting. They work with people that they get to know, and so they get to like. And so they want to move into that industry, maybe even get hired by that company. And so if companies are interested in recruiting people, then these are the kinds of opportunities they can offer that will allow that to happen. And also, before I would say maybe the 50s, when times were good, companies hired. When times were bad, they didn't fire people. They hung on to them. Okay, maybe they didn't make as high profits as they did when times were good. But they reduced the cyclicity in some of the fields that are important for us to continue, because if you don't have job security, that makes it really hard for you to want to go into that discipline or work on that. So those are okay. That's kind of a different culture change, because hey, we live in a capitalist society. Everything is driven by profit, and the thing is that they have to start to realize that there is a social and an economic reason to maybe not always say, okay, every year you have to make 20% more, in your profits, or the stockholders, might walk. So companies need to think about what is their long-term strategy. Now, government, what can government do? Government and even my agency could maybe put more investments into training programs. How do you reskill people? Okay, let's say you've got, hey, since I've been on the planet, I mean, there are a lot of industries that have come and gone. I mean, who has a typewriter anymore? I mean, I was there when there were typewriters. I was there when there were mimeograph machines. And for me, when I first got my PhD, I was there when they still had punch tape, and now they've got the cloud. Okay, so everything is really, there's so many industries that come and go, and so the people that were employed in those industries that no longer are relevant because of, new technological changes, they have to go somewhere. And so how do you have to have programs that will actually pay to have them be reskilled. You can't say like, okay, you have to do this training, but you have to do it for free, because, how are they going to feed their family in the meantime, And so that's an investment that either government has to make, which means when I say government, that means the taxpayer has to decide they're going to do that, okay? Or is that going to be the companies? Are they going to decide, for our long-term strategy to have a stable workforce or a stable economy, we would have to be thinking about maybe building this into our business model. And you know what? That really comes down to universities and business schools and how they teach business. But, the energy transition, that is just a microcosm of what's going on with even the greater economy, with all of these changes in technology. And like you said, with AI, that also is going to be, that's going to be a real game changer, in my view. And everybody better learn how to deal with it, as opposed to being afraid of it.
Right.
You know, embrace it and use it and figure out how you can benefit from that, as opposed to saying like, you know, no, we don't want to do this, or this is a bad thing because it will replace all these other jobs. It may replace some of those jobs, but it will create new jobs, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. As we close our conversation today, I'd love to hear about what excites you about the energy transition right now.
Oh, wow. Well, you know what? Right now, there's so much money flying into that. I mean, from the government, from venture capitalists, just, it is a chance for people to become really entrepreneurial, to really have new ideas and new approaches to all kinds of things. And it's a way where you can create your own future. You can create your own machine. You don't have to be part of somebody else's machine, because nothing gives you satisfaction like creating something that can change the world. And we are in a place right now in the energy transition with climate change and all of these sort of crises that are happening, that the opportunities and the money to fund those opportunities is everywhere. You just have to have an idea, and you have to build a team that can buy into your vision, that can make that happen. So it's a super exciting time right now. And especially, like I said, with the energy transition, there's so many different ways you can go there that it's really ready to take off. And to be a part of that would be super exciting.
Definitely. And if you could leave the public with one thing, is there one message that you would like them to take away from this conversation?
Yeah. The future is yours. Go for it. And don't wait, you know. And the other thing would be, don't go alone. You know, talk to other people. Share your vision. Don't be afraid. You know, fear is the biggest downer in making your life incredible.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show today.
It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you talking with me about this.
We got a great overall perspective from Dr. Ransom. So now I'm going to chat with Abhinav Vishal, a petroleum engineering undergraduate student from India, about the role that petroleum engineering can play in the energy transition in his country, and why he chose that as a particular discipline. Here's our conversation. So for this part of the episode, we are going to continue on the theme of the next generation of energy workforce. And we're very, very lucky to have today Abhinav Vishal, but it's kind of the concept of who is going to be the workers, the engineers for this energy transition, and what are their values, what are their perspectives. So Abhinav, welcome. Can you give us a brief introduction of yourself, your university? Tell us a little bit about your background and why you decided to study petroleum engineering.
First of all, thank you, Professor, for this wonderful opportunity and for that wonderful introduction of mine. So let me introduce myself. My name is Abhinav Vishal, and I come from a city in India which is called Jamshedpur. It is after the name of Jamshedji Nasarwanji Tata. So my schooling started in Loyola School, which is run by Society of Jesuits. So I did my schooling over there till the high school schooling, and then I gave my IIT JEE mains and advanced examination, which is one of the toughest examination in the world. So after qualifying that examination, I got into Rajiv Gandhi Institute of Petroleum Technology, also known as RGIPT, which is in Amethi district of Uttar Pradesh, India. So, how petroleum engineering? Actually, from my childhood only, I was pretty much fascinated towards how oil comes from the subsurface, how engineers, how scientists, how geoscientists, how geophysicists look over these operations, how oil comes, how gas comes, and how equally they contribute to the greenhouse emissions. So I'm fascinated about that, and pretty much about my background. Actually, my father is a veterinarian, and my mother is a homemaker. So I come from a decent background. My father is a veterinarian and my mother is a homemaker. So they taught me about how to deal with things in life and how to get a wonderful career in this industry.
Well, thank you. That's interesting background. And one of the things we're trying to do to have different voices and hear from, not only someone from India, but someone kind of starting their educational career like you are. So I know that you're very involved in like student organizations, and I mean, you've reached out to me for organizing a webinar several months ago, and the rest of it. Um, so, what makes you passionate and so involved? Is it just your personality, or what are you looking for when you can talk about all these student leadership kind of a positions that you're accepting?
Yeah, it's a very good question, sir. Actually, I like this question because from my school days only, I have led too many student organizations, from entrepreneurship clubs to cultural clubs. And now in college, I have started like my college is a domain specific, energy specific institute in India. It's the first energy specific institute in India. So uh, when I reached college, when I started my petroleum engineering, I came across many student chapters like SPE, SEG, EAG, and plenty more student chapters. In India, we have Federation of Indian Petroleum Industry. So I got interested in two of the student chapters, which is the SPE and AAPG. And now I'm working as communication chairperson at SPE RGIPT student chapter and treasurer at AAPG RGIPT student chapters. So my journey started from these chapters as a member, but when I started contributing towards the chapter, towards the betterment of both the chapters, SP and APG, so I got promoted. I organized various field trips, webinars, seminars, and most importantly, the interactive sessions which we had with our executives, with our members on like spreading petroleum engineering, spreading the oil and gas industry. Like in India, there are very less students who are involved in petroleum engineering. They are more towards the computer science, IT industry. But in petroleum engineering, we are having very less. So the the morale or the surrounding which these chapters provide us, it's quite interesting. Like SP Student Chapter is one of the most active student organizations in the world, and APG is also one such. So leading both organizations, working for both of them, I'm quite obliged.
Well, I applaud your idea of reaching out to the professional network, global organizations. I think that'll do you well in the long term. And I applaud your ability, your interest to step up and not only just participate, but lead and organize and help with that. And the whole idea of communicating the story about petroleum engineering I think it's really important. Most people probably wouldn't think of oil and gas in India, but there are large companies like Reliance, and there are, large oil fields off Mumbai that do represent a part of the energy uh, ecosystem for India. So you're in a good place. So let's talk a little bit about more the skills, the engineering, scientific, mathematical kind of skills that you're trying to develop and kind of not just get a degree but have that professional resume that you think will do good whether or not it's petroleum engineering or another form of energy within your career. So talk a little bit about the skill set that you're trying to gain in your courses.
Yeah. So like skill sets from my perspective are very much important. Like currently, we should have those skills are USP, the unique selling proportion, which will be admired by the leaders in this industry. So, in my mind, in my internship, the summer internship, I did at ONGC Mumbai. So from there, I got to learn many things. So I did a project over there, which signified uh, we created a Python GUI application Kinter for designing a three-phase separator. So for that, I had to learn about something about the Kinter, which is the GUI application of Python, and from there I had to develop certain codes, and then from there I have designed a three-phase separator. And with Professor Crompton, I did one project on predictive maintenance, which had like a vast impact on my resume. Like in my college, there are like very less professors working on machine learning with the combination of predictive maintenance. But working with Professor Crompton, it has like I'm having knowledge about predictive maintenance, what is predictive maintenance, and how it affects the industry. And in my institute, that is RGIPT, we are having a very much like technical skills oriented session. For example, we are having labs in which we are taught about Kappa, which is used in the well test. Then we are having Aspen HYSYS, which is used for simulation of the oil and gas in the downstream industry. Then we are working on Petrel, Petex, IHS Kingdom. And for resume purpose, these softwares, these technical skills, the machine learning, AI, data science, these play a very important role in developing our resume, developing ourselves, and most importantly, you will get a USP out of this.
Well, it sounds like almost from the beginning you are beginning to merge the skills of petroleum engineering as well as data science, which is very good. So what would you, is it kind of an obvious statement about the petroleum engineer and other forms of energy professionals are going to need to have a high degree of digital literacy? I mean, you're an engineer who knows how to program.
We are frankly saying, Professor, yes, digital literacy in today's age, like uh, in 20th century, 19th century, 20th century, oil is a gold. But now in 21st century, data is the oil of 21st century. So by that statement, I would like to say digital literacy is very much important for us. How? Because everywhere there are operating robots, IoT is there, data science is there, algorithms is there, which is making work simpler for us. So in my mind, in every technical institutions, in every conferences, there are things which are like collaborating with data literacy and digital literacy, and it is very much important. It is very crucial in our age because we know that in energy transition, digitalization is playing a very big role. So in my mind, digital literacy is very much crucial.
How important will petroleum engineers be in the future of the energy transition?
A petroleum engineer has a vast technical knowledge about how the hydrocarbon reservoirs works, how drilling is done, how completion is done, how production is done, and how various activities, the facilities is done. So as a petroleum engineer, like technical skills of a petroleum engineer are quite important. How it's important? Like in carbon capture, utilization, and storage, petroleum engineers play a very important role in injecting the CO2 which is trapped. We play a very important role. Then in directional drilling, in hydraulic fracturing, in fracking, we play a very crucial role. So not in just this part, in reservoir modeling, we play a crucial role because that technical knowledge about the reservoir, only petroleum engineers, reservoir engineers, as the sub branch, plays very importantly. And in my mind, petroleum engineers are like they are having vast knowledge. They are having knowledge of subsurface. They are having knowledge of the uh, well, how the well will work. They're having knowledge about the formation and evaluation, how the SP log, resistivity log, they work. They also know about the uh, well test, how the well will work on certain if we'll treat the well in that manner, how it will replicate that. So, in my mind, petroleum engineers will play a significant role in the energy transition.
Well, just the last question here. How do you talk about the energy transition, the importance of oil and gas to your friends who are not involved in the same sort of coursework that you are? Do you talk a lot about energy, outside the classroom?
Frankly saying, sir, I talk a lot about energy transition. Like in my branch, in my class, there are very less students who are focusing on research on energy. I am one of them that who is focusing on research. Others are focusing on job. So in my mind, I always tell them that work in this energy transition, that it will value not only it will not value only you, also the environment, also the world. So uh, like we are petroleum engineers, but in recent times, I've seen that in my college also, people who have done their bachelor's in petroleum engineering, master's in petroleum engineering, but and PhD in petroleum engineering, but their research interest is not engineering. Their research interest is somewhat uh, they are finding polymer surfactant, gas hydrate, which is like not engineering. It is the science part of the oil and gas. We are eliminating the engineering side of us. We are more towards the scientific background, the petroleum chemistry, what it will tell us about. So I generally talk to them like like engineering is there, energy transition is there, but if you will only talk about job oriented, then you only want a job in India, you want a settled life, you want a good family, but who will then play a leader in the sustainable leader? Who will play as a sustainable leader? So often tell them, be in this industry, work in this industry, and do something for the energy industry as an new energy leader.
Well, thank you. We in all of our interviews, there's a common theme that the energy transition, we can't just leave it up to the experts, to the scientists, that it really depends on each one of us and the choices that we make. So we're very glad to hear your perspective, to listen to your voice, and to know that you are going to be very much invested as an evangelist and as a very competent engineer going into the future. So, Abhinav, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for inviting me for this excellent series. Talking with you professionals, it's my honor. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed these conversations, exploring the challenges and opportunities of recruiting and developing the next generation of engineers for the energy transition. As the International Renewable Energy Agency has made clear, we urgently need to support the next generation of energy professionals and reskill the current workforce in order to address the energy transition.
So, with this in mind, how can we attract and train the hands on workforce we need to meet the growing energy demands of the 21st century? Companies can maybe tap into talent pools from fossil fuel industries. And in many instances, these workers have skills that are transferable to the jobs required for the energy transition.
As Dr. Ransom mentioned, companies could adopt more inclusive hiring practices, such as shifting to skills-based rather than credential-based hiring. Companies can also facilitate training and retraining, creating jobs needed for the energy transition through vocational schools and on-the-job training programs. Universities may have to in turn modify existing curriculum and to develop new courses in the energy as a system perspective, as Dr. Ashagi told us in our very first episode.
Absolutely, Jim, because the energy transition is up to the changes that we're willing to make as individuals and as a society. So until next time, we hope you learned a little bit more about the story of the energy transition, because the energy transition is up to you and me.
We would like to thank the USC Oshagi Center for Energy Transition, which aims to develop innovations in energy technologies and foster the transition to a low-carbon future, for sponsoring this podcast. Special thanks also to our guests for today, and Abhi, our technical guru, for their important contributions to our podcast. Thank you for tuning into Energy Transition Talk. We would really appreciate it if you could leave a rating and review, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already, so you can automatically get access to our new episodes. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Justine.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Paulina, signing off from Energy Transition Talk. Stay tuned for our next and final episode of the season.